Hello, my name is Shakiri Silas, and today we will be talking about cultural responsiveness in education. In this presentation, I will be giving research insights and future directions, and I will also be giving five scholarly articles that I am reviewing from ranging from 2009 to 2005 that I used in order to help me with this presentation. All right, so this is a little bit of introduction and an overview of what I'll be talking about. My literature review does focus on the cultural responsiveness in educational settings, particularly examining what factors influence teachers' ability to engage with diverse populations. I analyzed five studies from 2009 through 2025 that explore different aspects of this topic, from personality traits to institutional support system. Throughout this presentation, I'll identify some common themes across these studies and consider the implication for the teaching practice. The ultimate goal of this presentation is to better understand how we as educators can create a more inclusive learning environment. My first study is machine learning and cultural responsiveness. This is by Perez Kasim and colleagues. They took an initiative approach by using machine learning algorithms to predict which teachers would demonstrate cultural responsive teaching behaviors. They found out that cultural intelligence, the ability to function effectively across cultural contexts and self-efficacies, were strong predictors of inclusive teaching practicing. What makes this study particularly interesting is its invocation of technology. We use technology a lot in class, and so this is a great research to use. There's also some statistical things in here, methods. We should note that since the data came from a self-supported survey, their potential response are biased in this. The key takeaway is that the targeted professional development focused on cultural intelligence might be an effective approach for improving classroom inclusivity. The second study, published just this year by Gomez and colleagues, took a qualitative approach to examine how personality traits and personal meaning system influence cultural responsiveness among university faculty. Throughout in-depth interviews, they found that traits like openness to experience and have a strong sense of purpose was associated with greater confidence in teaching diverse students populations. The strength of this research lies in its deep exploration of the internal factors that motivate inclusive teaching, something that is mostly all the time overlooked in more skill-based approaches. However, the small sample sizes mean we should be cautious about generalization these findings too broadly. This study suggests that personal development and reflection might be just as important as pedagogical training when preparing faculty to teach diverse student populations. I do plan on becoming a college educator. Therefore, this research is very important, and I love how they use the small sample size to limit the generalization. That's the limitation of it because it's very small. Moving to a more systematic perspective, Burke and his colleagues, which was had a large scale survey of teacher educators across another country. I think it's more Australia and New Zealand. I didn't add that in there. They specifically examined what factors enable or constrain diversity and responsive teaching practices. Their findings do highlight the importance of institutional by having institutional support system, personal experience with diversity, and also the access to ongoing professional development. The large sample does give it does increase the liability. The limitation is that it's just another self-reporting methodology. An implication is that both individual and systematic approaches needed for change. This suggests that institution needs to create structures and provide policies that actively support faculty and develop inclusive teaching practices. My fourth study is a little older. It's in 2009. It's Elliker and his colleague that developed and evaluated training framework for multicultural inclusive teaching. Their central argument is that simply being aware of diversity issue isn't enough to change teacher practices. I really agree with that. Their framework emphasizes ongoing reflection. It does also sustain support and practical application and also participation in community. The strength of this work is that it provides an actionable approach to professional development. The only downfall is that the difficulty in measuring the long-term attitude. This study does reinforce the idea that becoming culturally responsive is a journey rather than a destination. It requires sustained effort and continuous growth rather than 1 month training sessions. The final study by Benito and his colleague is a systematic review of training outcomes in psychology, which has important parallels in education. They examine study using various methodologies and find that effective training programs improve cultural knowledge, self-awareness, and cross-cultural skills. The most effective approach were experiential, reflective, and also ongoing rather than one-time workshops. A limitation that is noticed there are few long-term and follow-up studies. The principles are highly relevant to the teacher development as well. It also suggests that um, cultural responsiveness training should involve hands-on experience, opportunities for reflection, and ongoing support, rather than giving them isolated training events. Which I agree with. I feel like if you work together in a group when it comes to cultural competence, the better off you have more ideas and it'll be more helpful for you. After looking across all five of these studies, there are several themes that have emerged. First, we have internal factors. We have personality traits, beliefs, motivation, and significantly impact cultural response to teaching. Second, we have institutional context matter, such as systematic support, which enables individuals' growth and implementation of, excuse me, inclusive practice. Thirdly, we have a one-time. Sorry. Thirdly, we have the ongoing development that all of these is saying that a one-time training is not sufficient and not helpful when we are doing cultural responsive teaching. When it comes to awareness, it's knowledge about that we must translate to concrete classroom practices. Also, when it goes to reflective practice, we have self-examination and adaptations are essential. We have also technological innovation and holistic approaches as well. These studies do collectively suggest that effective cultural responsiveness requires holistic approaches that address cognitive, emotional, and behavioral dimensions of teaching practices. All right, this slide is just a summary of the findings. We have cultural responsiveness does require both personal and institutional development. The key predictors include cultural intelligence, self-efficacy, personality traits like openness, sense of purpose and meaning. We also have effective development strategies. One of those strategies are to sustain rather than one-time interventions, experiential learning opportunities, reflective practice component, institutional support. The research limitations are reliance on the self-supporting, and it also have few longitudinal studies. Here are some questions that I will ask for further inquiry. I will ask, how can we effectively measure the long-term impact of cultural responsiveness training on actual classroom practices? Also, what specific institutional policies most effectively support faculty in developing cultural responsiveness? How might technology enhanced approaches like AI be ethically used to support cultural responsiveness? What role does student feedback play in developing more cultural responsive teaching practice? How do Intersections of identity such as race, gender, socioeconomic status affect the development and implementation of culturally responsive teaching, where strategies best support faculty in moving from cultural awareness to meaningful classroom action. That concludes my presentation. These are my references, and if you have any questions, please let me know.